Do you mind if I, go on top?
No, that's fine. I'm okay with either way.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
No problem.
So, what do we do now?
Oh, Ethan! Nadia. I suppose this is why they call you Ethan Cunt. Yes. Well, I penetrate the cunts. Oh, Ethan. Oop. Just went out of the covers for a bit. You know what the funny thing is? What? I'm going to get married in the next film, but not to you. Why? I don't know, the plot requires it. Okay, I'll just leave the franchise. Okay. On good terms? On good terms. Good. Yeah, that's pretty much the reaction. Good God, this is probably the most impossible mission I've ever done. And I've only just started to penetrate. Woo!
Gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Mission Impossible 2, which the picture of which is near the 15 certification, the UK 15, that is. The Ireland one's got pictures from 5 and 6, which also have pictures at the top. And on the back, it's this one here. So, Mission Impossible 2. This film, first of all, off the bat, this film is a ton of fun. It's also really, it's a bit silly in some places. Sorry about that, my camera decided it didn't want to record anymore, and then wanted to do an update. Anyway, so, as I was saying, this film's kind of a bit more of a suspension of disbelief. It's, not everything is quite so realistic. I mean, for this series, I mean, the last film was a bit more of a typical spy thriller. In a way, you had a bit more tension, it was more conventional spy stuff. This film is more action-based film. This one's a bit more centred on the action, although, as the filmmakers say, it's not the complete driving force, it's there to help with the story. But in terms of the style of the film, it is a very action-based, it's a very action spy-based film. And it feels very, very different to the first film. I mean, each film feels a bit different to each other. Maybe 5 and 6 are similar, but each other film feels pretty different to each other. But this film feels, considering this is the first sequel, it feels extremely different to the first film. You would have thought it would gradually get to this point and something like this would come at film 4 or film 5. But no, this film is the second film. So the plot of the film sees Ethan Hunt required to hire Nadia Hoffman Hall, I think, played by Fandy Newton, to help in a mission to stop Sean Ambrose, played by Dougray Scott, to recover a virus created by a Russian scientist, I believe, who was in biological basically finding viruses and antidotes, not for weapons, just normally. And unfortunately, something's gone wrong. Simon Ambrose has, not Simon Ambrose, that's in Johnny English Reborn. Sean Ambrose is trying to get his hands on the virus and the antidote for Cash. So Ethan and his team, which also includes Vig Rhames' returning character, Luther Sickle, and also Billy Brandt. Can't remember the actor's name. But they're trying to stop Amrose's evil plans and stop Brendan Gleeson's character from trying to get it. And it's goes all from there. It's I don't completely follow it, but I think I think I get it. It's just remembering and repeating it. It's slightly more. Well, the first one was slightly convoluted, but each reveal felt now it makes sense. This one, it's kind of makes sense as we go along, but the overall goal, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, as I mentioned, this film is a ton of fun, lots of action, lots of great, real stunt work, especially from Tom Cruise, who plays Ethan Hunt. He does many of his own stunts, and it's quite a lot of dangerous stuff, as I learned from some Blu-ray extras on the disc. He does a great performance. He's really great as Ethan Hunt. Dougray Scott is kind of a mixed bag. In some places he's great, both in mainly his eyes, as they mentioned in the behind the scenes. His eyes really show the emotion. But there are some points where he's good, and then there's some points where it doesn't sound like he's that invested. That was mainly in the that one bit in the scene where they're at the biochemical labs. There was one bit where he didn't sound that into it, but most of the other time he is really into it. And there is a bit before that where I can see some genuine emotion from him. As a character, I do think he's one of the better villains of the series. I mean, you've got Phelps, who was pretty much a portrayal of what his character was in the TV series, even if for the film it made sense. You've got the guy in the third film, who I think is okay. Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think that's his name, does a good job. The villain in the fourth film, I can't remember. I don't really know. And Solomon Lane? Yeah, Solomon Lane's a good one, I suppose. And then you've got Henry Cavill's one, who's the best one. August Walker. But I do think Dougray Scott is a great villain. I don't know if he was the complete right choice for the role, but he does a good job. And Richard Roxburgh does a pretty good job as his his number two, who gets Ambrose slices a bit of his finger off at one point, just so, I don't know, just because he was saying stuff about Nadia, who's Sean's ex, and she's gone back to him as part of her mission. And Sean's uncertain yet Roxburgh character doesn't trust her at all, and Ambrose is trying to show some authority over him, even though he's got some suspicions, and Roxburgh's character proves to be completely right. I think his name's Hugh, but he's proven to be completely right in the bit where Sean discovers their worries were true. That's the bit where he shows the genuine emotion, where he feels betrayed by his lover. As for the plot, it's a good plot, but it doesn't really feel that much of a Mission Impossible film. There isn't that much impossible stuff to go down. The 40 seconds in and out into the building shaft thing, maybe, but other than that, it's not really Mission Impossible. It's Mission Difficult, and as Anthony Hopkins' cameo explains, well, Mr. Hunt, this isn't Mission Difficult, it's Mission Impossible. Difficult should be a walk in the park. And yeah, this film does feel like it's difficult missions, but not impossible. I think there was more impossible stuff in the previous film, more twists and turns. This film feels very, as I said, it's very different, but I think it loses some of that, the feel from the first film and the original series. I think it's got a bit of a... It's lost a little bit of that when trying to be a bit more of an action film. Plus the other... And when it's not trying to be an action film, when it's trying to do its other elements, it loses that. I think that... I mean, it's still a great spy film, and it's a brilliant action film, but I think it loses some of that Mission Impossible underline that was in the previous instalment and the show. I think the other three films get a bit of it in there, and they kind of feel kind of in between the first and the second films. 3 onwards feel kind of in between, with 4 possibly being the closest to the since the first to do kind of be more like the show. But certainly this film does lose a bit of that Mission Impossible feeling, apart from maybe that one bit where Ethan has to jump through the roof and then retrieve his line, or have his line retrieved by Billy within 40 seconds. That's the closest I got to Mission Impossible, rather than just Mission Difficult. That being said, I do really enjoyed the film. I think it's really good. I don't think it's quite as good as the last film in terms of a Mission Impossible film. In fact, as a Mission Impossible film, I think it's the weakest. However, I still thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I think it's good. I think it's really good. I think it's really fun and entertaining. This used to be above the first film, because I had such a great time with it on my first viewing compared to the first film. Well, I did like it, but wasn't completely the biggest fan of it, but I did like it. This time round, I respected more of the first film with what it was trying to do, what the story was, and the elements, and the execution proved great. And also, as a film based on the TV series, it proved to be a great adaptation, despite what they did with Jim Phelps, as I've mentioned several times already. Here, it's very different like that. Like I said, if it was the 4th or 5th film, it would make sense, but the second film, it completely turns the tables. And that's also probably why this film's gone down a little bit, in my opinion. So it might actually be my second least favourites, even though it's the one I enjoy the most, or second most. I see what we think on the rewatch of Fallout. I shall re-rank these films on the Retro channel after completing the viewing, but I think some of them are going to be moved since the previous ones on the main channel. I do think this is a fun, entertaining film. I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it's fun. I also have to mention the visuals. John Woo's style of filming and editing is kind of it looks nice, but there's some bits where it feels a little like you're recapping some of the bits, especially in the action scenes, a couple of times just to get a stylistic feel to it. It does feel very stylistic, and I don't think it's got the best filmed or editing. That all the editing is just too quick in some bits, especially in the action scenes, but I do think it's done okay. There is some really cool action moments, but that's really the best thing I can say. It's the action is great. I mean, most of the stuff is great, but the action is basically the best stuff in the film, plus the acting. And I'm not going to talk too much more about this one, but I think, yeah, it is an enjoyable film, as I've mentioned several times. So I'm going to give Mission Impossible 2 a 8 out of 10. Like I say, I don't think it's perfect. I think it's good, entertaining, but sadly, it doesn't hit all of the notes. Like I said, it doesn't feel like a Mission Impossible 2 film, beyond some elements. and more of a action-packed, an action-packed spy film, but not quite the Mission Impossible ones. Maybe if there was more Mission Impossible, it's difficult or impossible missions in there, then it probably would make sense. And some of the editing could have been a little bit better, even if some of those cool moments would have looked a bit different. But there was plenty of great stuff in this film, and it was still a really enjoyable film. Also, at no point did the IMF or any American organisation or any organisation at all come after Ethan Hunt or his team at all. At no point were they mistrusted or suspected of doing wrongdoings by their allies or leaders or bosses. At no point. They just got on with the mission. Thank fuck. Every other film has one of those things I mentioned, at least. Even film 6, which is my favourite, does kind of a little bit of that last point I mentioned about them not quite trusting him. But at the end, they're like, oh, okay. And they didn't have too much involvement they didn't try and take the team out or bring them in or anything, apart from that one bit, but then the villain escapes, so... priorities. But the other 4 films, they kind of mix and match up those other points. The third film, like I said, has that one point when Lawrence Fishburne's character gets Hunt brought in for some reason. But out of all those points I mentioned, Mission Impossible 2 has none of that at all. Thank fuck. It's the only one. Despite some of the other ones having little of them, this film has none of it. We're basically trying to stop the rogue agent, not the real, proper good agents, the protagonists. Phew. Thank fuck. But this is the only one. Shame. Oh well. Anyway, so that's it from Mission Impossible 2. I thought it was fun, really good and really entertaining, but not quite a Mission Impossible film, but still really good. Still really liked it. So that's it from my review of Mission Impossible 2. Thank you for watching. The next Mission Impossible film I will be reviewing will be Mission Impossible 3, which is also pretty different compared to the previous 2 films. So we'll see how that goes down, and on the second viewing anyway. And also on the cover, that's this film here, and on the back, this tiny little picture at the bottom here. Between 2 fifth film pictures. As for future reviews, the next Doctor Who review should be The Tomb of the Cybermen. I shall also be doing the Season 4 ranking soon. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Excuse me. Not at all. I prefer either way. Shit. It was always a very good take. I'll tell you what I want, and I really want. I want sunglasses that won't break when I'm trying to do a Mission Impossible 2 sketch. Sorry, I heard that song earlier. Come on, guys, you got a few more takes in your left. I wouldn't use you in the bed scene. Spoiler. Lost these things. Okay, let's try this again. Take 2. Fuck. You know, take 2 in a minute. No. Right. Bastards. Is it filming, by the way? Yeah, sorry. Have to be sure. Okay. 2. Okay, my series. Action.